best that I can with the best that I have.
That particular pivot, I discovered that I had to be creative
and really just evaluate, who you are.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Pivotal Moments with Liletta. Now, I am super excited about today's guest. And let me just tell you a little bit about how I came across the lovely Olivia. So I actually saw a Facebook Live, and this beautiful individual was just performing and just really touching my soul with her singing and her music. And so I've been following, and I was like, I have to get her on my show. So I'm super excited and just, yeah, super excited to introduce to you all Olivia. Olivia, thank you for joining Pivotal Moments. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for creating a beautiful platform and for really, I think a lot about those of us who share content, and we give voice to those who don't speak. And so it's super important what you're doing right now, and whomever it touches, to those people, whoever you are, whenever you hear this, whenever you see this, hello, we love you, and that's why we're doing this. That's
Absolutely. All a little bit about yourself. Like I said, I immediately connected with you. Really, you talk a lot about just the journey of people healing and being okay and loving themselves, and that's totally what I'm all about. My second book is all about that process of feeling good about who you are. So I just really connected with you. So why don't you share a little bit about yourself?
Yes. So I'll start. First of all, my name is Olivia. I go by Olivia K. My real name is Olivia Harris, which is, you can call me either one. People are like, oh, Olivia Harris or Olivia K. But Olivia K is the name that I call myself when I perform. And okay. So first of all, I'm from Brooklyn, New York. I was born and raised in the Republic. And I grew up, I'm a New Yorker through and through. I went to Columbia University. I literally never left New York until, I never lived anywhere longer. I never lived anywhere that wasn't New York, except till literally now, when you might say, pivoted and came and North Carolina, which is where I am with my dad. I am my mom, and I would say one of the big things that contributed to who I am and what matters to me is that both of my parents are spiritual seekers, people who always looked for a world view, a global view, a way of thinking. My mom is from Guyana, South America. So growing up in Brooklyn too, with such a huge population of Caribbean American, Latinos, and everybody else just all mixed up in there, was a huge part of my awareness of life as a human being, and being a globalist, really caring about other people outside of myself, outside of my family. And I think it has a lot to do as well with being in a mixed race family, where my family was a lot of different groups of people all at once. And so when you grow up in a family that's really big, that has a lot of different, we had people from India, China, African American, Native American, from Guyana. So this whole group of people, we were but there was no sense, I never grew up with a sense of hierarchy about it. I never grew up with a sense of there was, darker brothers, lighter brothers. And I could be wrong, honestly, in your child experience, but it was my grandmother was not the person she was very about everybody.
Yeah.
Even to the past as a Chinese woman. She just looked like a Chinese woman. I grew up living with her, but her whole thing was about the commitment to the community, to family, to, she worked with the congressman in my district. She was a minister. She was always about helping people in any way possible.
Wow.
And so my mom was the same way. My mom is a community organizer, worked with health department for hospitals and organizing fairs about, health and well-being. And then she became a science teacher. And I say that all because to me, who I am is a is sort of like the cherry on top of this incredible long history of people, of healers and thinkers and spiritual people. And so they matter so much to me. And I feel often that I'm carrying their legacy on my shoulders and it kind of speaking through me. So like when my grandmother passed away a couple of years ago, and we'll talk more about this when you ask me these questions, but but like I wear pretty much everything I wear that's jewelry was like my grandmother's or given to me. But so like this is gold, and this is the cross, and this is these bracelets that my grandmother gave to me. And I feel her presence all the time, and I talk to her all the time. Like she's just like she is for me one of my guiding lights, and always has been. And so and I'm a singer, songwriter. All the other things, right? Like I think of myself as a person, a leader in thought. And music is my medium. Yeah.
I love that introduction. And I'll tell you what I really love about it. I actually talk about that in my second book, in that so many times we identify ourselves by things that can change. And that can leave us very unhappy, not satisfied. But when we can identify ourselves by things that are unchangeable, like that family legacy, like those things that were passed on to us, what we are on the inside, that's when we can find true fulfillment. So I love that you shared all that. Yeah. Let's talk about pivoting. So, when we finally kind of think about pivoting and we kind of identify what that is, most of the time we can then start thinking about lots of times where we had to pivot. But if you could talk about, a time when you had to make a pivot, what would you share?
I have, like you said, there are several that come to mind.
Yeah.
I think the most, you could say one of the biggest ones for me was in 2016, I decided that I was going to be a full-time artist. And that choice was something, I didn't know what that really meant. I didn't know what that would look like. I just knew that I wasn't going to do what I was doing anymore. And I worked, at the time I worked at my high school as an IT person, as an educator primarily, like really educating the faculty and the staff and the students on how to use different educational technology, which was fine. I was good at it, and I had the skill set to do it, and the ability, the personality to really like be helpful. But it was just such a drain on my spirit. And it was partially the environment itself and partially the work I was doing. I was like, this is not what I came to Earth to do. No, this is not it.
Yeah.
I made this choice in 2016. I said, I am not going back. I had made a promise to myself, you are going to work there for 2 years. And then at the end of that, I don't know what you're going to do, but you're going to do something else. And you're going to be in the arts and you're going to pursue this artistic dream of working in music. Yeah.
Wow. That is quite a pivot. So, when we talk about pivots and going to pivotal moments, we find that the pivotal moment is centered around something that's important. It's that thing that stays, that's unchangeable, and you make this shift or adjustments around that. And a lot of times we kind of discover that as we're pivoting, we discover what that thing was. So for you, and you kind of touched on it, but what would you say was the thing that was important that you discovered that was unchangeable, that you make all these other shifts around that?
Yes. I think one of the biggest shift was in that particular pivot, because there were other pivots where I discovered other things. That particular pivot, I discovered that I had to be creative in what I was doing. And like what I was doing needed to be engaged in, a higher purpose And what
Yeah.
I was doing, it couldn't be like just like a work a day. Like I'm just gonna do meaningful things on the weekends or when I get off, or it was like I needed to spend the majority of my focus on that kind of energy. And not everyone is like that. Some people really can do, like they're like, oh, like I kind of work at it a little bit. I get off of work and then I do it. And I just, for me, I'm sort of a total immersion person. Like I'm either all in or I'm all out. And so,
Yeah.
that serves me to get to where I've been in many ways, but it also can be very frustrating because life is not that. Like life is not usually a total focus. You've usually got several things going on. And so
Yeah.
whenever, like my problem has always been like when there's so many things going on, I just get overwhelmed. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
I get it. I get it. And actually, that's one of the things. So this video series really was also to kind of help implement the workshops that I do around the same topic of pivoting. And one of the things that we talk about is if you can focus on the things that are important, that are unchanging, then we can learn to stay true to those things, even if what we're doing kind of changes a bit. So it's like in your case, right? Like that creativity, like that's important, that's unchangeable. So then it becomes easier, a little easier to make the necessary shifts because that cannot change. I have to have this. Whatever I'm doing, I have to make sure this stays central. So I love that you share that because a lot of people feel that way. A lot of people do, or they're like, my passion has to be of utmost importance. I have to stay true to that.
Yep. When you talk about what's important, what's unchanging,
Yeah.
that's the advice I give to young people when they're trying to decide what kind of work they want to do. Like if you don't have a clear passion,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, like I have a cousin we're about 8 years apart, and I remember him telling me, when he was like 14, like, oh, well, what should I do? How do I, like, I don't know where I want to go to college, because he was about to go into high school. So it's kind of like now I need to start thinking about the next.
Yeah.
And I said to him, well, maybe you don't know what you want to do. Because my life, it's always been so clear that I love music, that
Yeah.
anyone who has known me from like kindergarten on up has known, oh, Olivia's going to do music, this is fine.
Right, right.
But not everybody has that. And I said to him, I said, well, maybe you don't know what you want to do. Maybe you know how you want to live.
I like that. Yeah, I might have to use that later. I like that. I like that a lot. Wow. Wow.
Because once you know, so some like other things that I discovered while pivoting in different ways was like, for example, one, I need to have flexibility in what I'm doing. So
Yeah.
like, I'm not a person who likes to go to a desk and sit there. That was one of the things I really disliked about Biocoms. Like I did not like just going there and sitting there. It might have been really cool. Everybody's like, you're so lucky you're in this
Right.
place. All these people, you could be making moves. I'm like, I just hate sitting down in one place. I hate it. I hate it. Why must I sit in one place? Like, and I'm a person, I don't like being cold. I don't like corporate environments for that reason. I do not like breathing my butt off. I worked in several of those locations.
Yes.
I was decent at my job, but I was just like, dang, I am cold and I wanted to move. Why am I here?
Yeah.
So, like for me, that was super important that like I started to do things where, I might have multiple jobs, positions, different kinds of things, like performing here, working there, whatever. But I loved being able to switch gears.
Yeah.
Physically.
Yeah.
Just switching gears. And that's, everybody is different, but that was, I needed to be able to get up. That's why I could do my other job, my IT job. I did get up all the time. It was like, go do that. So I would get up and I'd go fix things. And that worked for my personality. It just wasn't attached to my purpose. And so it didn't feel like the right, marriage of things.
Yeah. And talking about switching gears a little bit. So let's talk about adjustments. So one of the things that I've really come to discover in just doing this whole process about pivoting is that Adjustment is actually defined differently than a pivot. So, with adjustment, it really is about adapting and making that shift in that way where you adapt to something. And sometimes it's not necessarily always favorable or even connected to your pivotal point, but it's something that is necessary to make adjustments. So, in your case, can you talk about a time when you had to make adjustments rather than pivot?
Hmm. Very interesting. I would say last year was just adjustment. It was just all adjustment. I was like, what is happening right now? So
Yeah.
I pivoted to say, okay, I'm doing arts. I'm gonna do that. And then I had versions of that. Like I had the I'm teaching artists version, and then it was like, oh well, and now there's no more work for this type of like I went from like,
Mm.
oh, making $800 a month, knowing that I was doing these part-time gigs teaching. I was like, oh cool. So I'm like, okay. So I'm thinking in my mind, okay, that's 800, and then I'll add this, I'll do some gigs, and that'll be this, and I'll put together this, workable something. And
Yeah.
when school came back, they didn't even have the gigs. Like the school, like, because what I didn't know, and these are the things you don't know until you're in it, is school arts work is seasonal. It
Oh.
typically bulk of it's at the end of the year if you're a performing artist. So like
Yeah.
if you're teaching in the school, you can teach year round, let's say, but they don't pay very much unless you're like an upper level person with all the certification. So I was getting paid literally like barely enough to go and come back.
Wow.
And I was working in like Queens, 2 hours away from where I lived. And I was like, what am I doing? And so
Yeah.
I'm working, and then you got to have your time. You put all this time to do stuff. It took me 4 hours. It was a 4 hour thing, but I was getting paid $50 per class. But 4 hours, because it was a 2 hour actual thing, and it was an hour to go and an hour to come. That was 4 hours for $50. That's like $13, $12.
Wow.
You don't
Wow.
really think about that. Like your mind is like $50. Like that's cool per hour. Like yeah, but then you do all that, so you start to adjust. Like, well, what do I actually have to do for
Yeah.
this to work? And I started last year. What ended up happening was I had this like it took a catastrophe to
Oh no.
yeah, my home was in a fire
Oh no.
and in January of last year. And we spent 7 months living in different places, just hotels, friends, this and that, and the displacement, the feeling where you don't belong anywhere. I do not wish that on anyone. Um,
Yeah.
if if you don't have a community around you, and if you don't get clear, you don't use it as a moment to be like, I am adjusting, and we are
Yeah.
not going back. But
Yeah.
you can really get caught up in that kind of season, like being caught in a current of being lost.
Mm.
I got a lot of respect for people who live in shelters, who don't have homes, because even though I was safe and where my things were and all that, I could only have like 3 bags worth of stuff on a regular
Yeah.
basis. I
Yeah.
would, even just to get home was like, where am I going? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you
Yeah.
start to me like, where am I going? Where do I live? Like,
Yeah.
do I have the keys? No, I don't have the keys. That lady has the keys. I have to.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, all right, all right, okay, all right,
That's
all
a
right.
lot. That is a lot. Wow. Whew. That, yeah, I can see how that was an adjustment.
And you have to realize it really makes you think, what is really important to me? I'm like, it is not physical things.
Yeah.
Like I was like, and I'm a clothes person. Like I have clothes for days.
Yeah.
Most of my clothes were literally being uh, cleaned because of the fire.
Yeah.
I had all sorts of random clothes, like whatever. And I was like, wow, clothes don't matter that much to me, though I like them. They don't,
Wow.
they don't make my quality of life. Like
Yeah.
they're just one of the things that when I have it, that's really great to have. But ultimately, one thing I took away, because it all kind of culminated in July of last year. We moved back into our house after man, we were fighting with the city. We were fighting with like electric and all. We were fighting with everybody just to be in our house, just to get, we never got our insurance money. Like we were fighting with everybody just to like, it was so
Yeah.
much. And like, this is like on the heels of my grandma had died the year before and we were her caretakers. So it was just like a lot of emotional stuff, but it culminated we were sitting in our house. We're back in our house. It's now safe to be inside. We don't have running water. We don't have electricity. We can take cold showers in our house if we want to, because we managed to jigger the plumber to something,
Yeah.
But I'm charging my phone on a stolen electric thing from my neighbor.
Wow.
So it's July 4th weekend and I wanted to take a hot shower. So I go to my neighbors who've been very kind, like they're just happy to have us and all that. But they were away for the weekend. And I'm like, okay, so I cannot go shower. I can't charge my laptop. And it hit me like, I was like, that's it. Nope, none of that. I used to be very neutral about living life and how I lived as whatever. I was like, nope, I can't be neutral anymore.
Wow.
I want running water. I want to live bare minimum. We gonna start there. Like
right.
It was like that. But see, I've always been a person who just didn't care about those things. I was always like, oh, whatever. But like, you have to care.
Yeah.
You have to care because no one will care for you. They won't.
Yeah.
You gotta decide, no, the buck stopped here. And I started, like, my day job was like, I was losing work in my day job because they were basically slowly closing, and it's a gym. So now it's basically closed entirely.
Yeah.
And so that was I was watching literally watching the hours just go away.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, well now I'm playing in the subway for money.
Wow. 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 Isn't that something? Well, so as we come to kind of the end of the conversation and so much of a journey, and I know, you've just given just a little snippet, right? Like it's just so much to live through. What do you want to share with the viewers? Like you're from you to us. What do you want to share?
Here's what I'll say. You have to know what you're doing it all for. Where are you trying to end up? And you don't know, like I said, you may not have, people always talk about visualize your house and your this and your that. And I know sometimes for me, that's hard. I don't know why. I'm not very visually oriented. So I'm like, oh, whatever. But I know how I want to feel. I know how I want to feel.
Yeah.
If this is not it, and I have to start inquiring into how I can feel the way that I want to feel. I want to feel safe. I want to feel warm. I want to feel loved. I want to feel, and then in every, you can look in every area of your life. You can look in your finances. You can look in your career. You can look at your relationships. If they're not matching up, it's time I pray for every person that you be the catalyst of the change rather than have the whole thing fall under you. Because I've lived it. If you don't have to, you can make small changes. Those small changes as you start, they build up. They build up into big changes.
Yeah.
But when you start on the path, as you continue on the path, it's a much smoother transition than to have it like.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm so glad you worded it that way because that's exactly how I am. And I tell people like all the different projects and things that I do, it's all about feeling. Like when I wrote the first book, I literally felt it and was like, I'm going to write a book. And I just went with it. So I love that you said that because it's true. Some people are good at the visualizing, their future or whatever, but some of us, it really is about how do I want to feel? And I love that. Wow. So before we close, you have been doing a summer series, a summer quarantine series. And there is one in particular that you do that is a sort of mantra that I would love for you to just give our viewers just a snippet of what that's like, because it feels just so good.
Yeah.
So if you could close us out with that would be awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, folks at home, you are going to be participating. You don't even know. I know it won't be at the same time. It won't be live, but don't worry. It's just the same. So I just do a little snap, and I'm going to look you in the eyes, and you're going to look at me in the eyes. And it's just like if you were in church. You know, if you've never been to church, just follow my lead. It's okay. What I mean is there's a moment where we're all together as a community, as a congregation, and you turn to your neighbor. You just turn to your neighbor and you might say something. You might say, neighbor, I love you. You might say, that's all right. You might say something like that. So today what we're going to say to each other, simple. You deserve good things. You deserve good things. You deserve good things. You deserve the best. You deserve good things. You deserve good things. You deserve good things. You deserve the best. Then you're going to tell them, I deserve good things. I deserve good things. I deserve good things. I deserve the best. I deserve good things. I deserve good things. I deserve good things. I deserve the best. I say we deserve good things. We deserve good things. We deserve good things. We deserve the best. We deserve good things. We deserve good things. We deserve good things. We deserve the best.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it. I love it so much. It feels so good.
It really does.
Wow. Well, Olivia, thank you for joining Pivotal Moments today and just being such a beautiful person and shining so brightly and being so authentic and true to who you are. It really speaks to myself, to others, and I know even when they watch this, it'll speak to them as well. So thank you so, so much.
You're so, so welcome. Thank you again for these platforms. We need them. And I'm so grateful for each and every one of us that is putting it out there so that people know that they're not alone and they can see a path.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you have been watching another episode of Pivotal Moments with Liletta. I'm sure you have been rejuvenated and encouraged and inspired by today's episode. And as always, thank you for watching and stay tuned for next time for another episode of Pivotal Moments with Liletta.